Hi guys. You know what? I think this is our first video lecture, isn't it? Yeah, I get a little sketchy on this. First of all, it's kind of early on a Saturday morning. Not that early, but a little early on a Saturday morning. But also because I'm not necessarily videoing these in order, so that makes it interesting. To say the least. Penelope's here with us, so we often have a visitor. Penelope loves this. This is like her favorite thing to do in the day, is come hang out and do videos. So this is Penelope. What we're going to talk about is an extension or a technique or some aspect of critical thinking, which is going to be kind of a core idea throughout the course. And in this case, one thing that critical thinkers do is operate via multiple perspectives, and that's what I want to talk about in this lecturette. Now, the idea of multiple perspectives, that is, perspectives function as tools, as frameworks to explain our observations and to understand causal mechanisms in our world. So psychology, and part of the aspect here, psychology is a diverse science. How diverse? Well, note that when you come to a university like Ohio State, when we say the psychology department, that kind of doesn't have a tremendous meaning when you consider the areas within the psychology. So you'll have the developmental area, you'll have the neuroscience area, you'll have the social area, you'll have the cognitive area, and all these are different flavors, if you will, of psychology, and they really represent diverse perspectives, diverse approaches to understanding the world around us, to understand how people make decisions, how people become who they are, if we're talking personality psychology, how the power of a situation might affect someone, what are the neural mechanisms that underlie a certain behavior, how does a perceptual system lead into what we're, how we understand our world. So a very diverse area, and your book does a good job of kind of delineating these diverse areas. So I think it's useful, and since this is our first lecture, I'm going to talk a little bit about taking the course and not just do the lecture. By the time you read this, view this, I would hope that you've already read the chapter, because this tends to extend where the chapter left off and direct us into an assignment. So that's my goal for the lecturettes, is really to be bound to the assignments. Okay? And anytime you have any questions about what we're doing, what are you going to do? That's right, you're going to come to our Zoom session, and that's Tuesday, I believe, at 11:30, but check your syllabus on that, because I'm just doing it off my head, and we haven't started the actual school week yet, so it's not, engraved in my memory quite yet. But you're going to come to the Zoom session, or you're going to watch the recorded Zoom session. Your choice. Either option could work, right? The problem is if you watch the recording, you don't get to ask any questions, and your classmates, some of you got to attend the live Zoom session so you can ask the questions, so the people who can attend can benefit from them. And think about it. We can have students as far away as China this semester, in China, so they're not able to watch our Zoom sessions because it's like frickin' 3 in the morning for them when we're doing it. So let's help each other out. Let's be good Buckeyes and be Buckeye strong and help each other out. So these areas of psychology are quite diverse. Neural, physiological, so how the body functions, and you've read these in the book, I hope, by now. Genetic, basis, evolutionary psychology, learning psychology, the psychology of learning, right? Cognitive, social psychology, that's my background and that's my training, was the social psychology area here at Ohio State. We like to brag. Last year I was ranked #1 graduate program in social psychology in the country. How about that? It's always in the top 5. It's a great program, and it's a very grueling program for the graduate students. Cultural, which social psychologists often claim that they own cultural as well. And then developmental psychology, the process of how we become who we are. Now, I had the great privilege. I started in the social psych area in 1999, and by 2007, guess what? It was the 100th anniversary of psychology at Ohio State. Huge party, 100-year anniversary party. People came from all over the world who had somehow taught or graduated from Ohio State psychology. They all descended on Ohio State, and we had 3 days of fun presentations, meetings, dinners, you name it, celebrating the 100th anniversary, right? And I remember one talk, and it was kind of the keynote talk, and for the life of me, I don't remember who delivered it now, and shame on me, but what I remember was the important thing, not the details, right? Memory isn't all that good for details necessarily, but can be damn good for gist, right? And what was the gist, Penelope? The gist was there's 2 things that we have on our wish list for psychology in general. And one is a very modern idea. It's an fMRI machine the size of a football helmet. So we can conduct research, right, live research on the brain as people are engaged in their normal tasks. You know, one of the downsides one of the downsides to fMRI research right now is we shove people in that tube, you know, with the big magnetic thing going boom, 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 boom. And then we show them stuff on screens, but they have to hold still and they have to interact in a very limited manner. So we're getting a good picture of the brain, but maybe not as realistic as the neural process could be if, let's say, we were able to take everyone in a classroom, put an fMRI football helmet on them, and then watch learning occur. We could manipulate different teaching strategies and watch the effects at a neural level. That would be freaking amazing, right? So we need an fMRI machine the size of a football helmet. That was wish number 1. It'll happen, right? Because everything becomes miniaturized. Cell phone is an example, right? Cell phone, a smartphone has you know, greater capacity than the computers that sent us to the moon in 1969. So now the second one is doable. It's been doable all along, and shame on us for not doing more of the second on the wish list, is that psychologists from different areas would collaborate to a greater extent. That is, we have very diverse perspectives because we're from very diverse areas, and the notion then is that diversity brings with it a tremendous benefit when we collaborate, because we begin to look at things at multiple perspectives and we begin to understand phenomenon in a far more detailed, nuanced, and complex manner, right? So to the extent that will happen in the future really is kind of controlled by systemic forces within the departments, how departments are funded, and what leaders in the departments reward, right? Going down the road, and this is one thing, I'll apologize in advance, I'm a shameless self-promoter, so for those of you who would be interested, I teach organizational psychology every fall, and organizations have a tremendous amount of power to make things happen or inhibit things from happening. So to what extent does an organization like a psychology department treasure collaboration and promote it, or to what extent do they set up systems that kind of impede it or interfere with it? But that's another story. So what are 3 potential positive outcomes? And notice I'm using the term potential because they might not be realized depending on how it's done. When we operate in diverse teams or diverse groups, collaborative groups, to do problem solving or to learn, we learn more about ourselves and others, because we listen to someone and say, wow, that's a very interesting perspective they're taking in asking that question or objecting to that piece of evidence. I would have never thought of that. So we learn about our own limitations, but we also learn to appreciate what other people can bring to our collaborative party. So we get to learn about ourselves and others, and that's clutch, right? It enhances creativity, because as we begin to throw out multiple perspectives, it's the interaction of those perspectives that often represent what we consider creative outcome or creative output. Wow, no one ever thought of that before. And it was generated by the interaction of multiple perspectives. And then we develop a more accurate understanding of our world. So that if I take a behaviorist approach and I say, hey, look, this person is operating in this manner to receive this reward, but how does the reward get represented at a neural level, right? And under what circumstances might that reward be considered a reward, but in other circumstances might be more akin to a punishment? And notice that what we're talking about is a behavioral psychologist sitting down with a neuropsychologist, sitting down with a social psychologist or a cultural psychologist, all contributing to a far more robust and interesting understanding of the issue at hand. So interactions teach us about ourselves. We learn about common ground. We learn about the unique contributions we can make and the ones that we might fail to make. And if we do not participate in cross-subdisciplinary collaborations, right? So, next up, creativity. Thought to be the process of non-conscious testing of relationships between ideas. And Graham Wallace talked about the necessity for a period of incubation. And I'll maintain that most creative thought is kind of those aha moments that are pushed. The idea is tested in the non-conscious, and when it seems to be a plausible idea to the non-conscious, it's pushed into the conscious mind. And that's when that light bulb goes off over our head, and we go, oh, shoot, right? And creativity is often facilitated, right? Oh, I'm sorry, let me back up. Creativity is the result of expertise. And the people who research creativity, I taught psychocreativity long ago, years ago, so you might want to take it with Stephen now. He does a bang-up job of the class. If you're interested, we have a psychology of creativity class. Creativity is the result of expertise. That's what everyone says. And what does it mean to become an expert in your field? You have to participate in the field significantly for 10 years to develop expertise. So most of us, by the time we come out of graduate school, right, we got, 3 or 4 years of undergraduate psychology, and then we got 5-6 years of graduate psychology, and then we get into our tenure path or whatever, our lecture path, whatever path we've taken. Give it another year or two, and we can start to consider ourselves experts, right? Problem with expertise, though, is we learn all the rules, and that kind of limits the approach we take. And that's where this third point, the creativity, is facilitated by novice questioning existing ways of doing things. And it makes us step back and say, yeah, I wonder why we always do it that way. Because the novice doesn't know any better, and they say, well, could we try this? And oftentimes, no, that wouldn't work. We've tried it in the past, but every once in a while a novice comes up with something, we go, wow, I guess we could try that. I wonder what the results of that would be. Right? So creativity. And then as far as the more accurate understanding of the world, it's critical thinking. We're looking at pros and cons. We're digesting different perspectives, assigning the truth value, the evidentiary value to the different disciplines, etc., within a given context. Now, people who do this with facility, and my old advisor, Dr. Tetlock, often studied political leaders and political decision makers. One of the tools that they use to understand these folks is a measure of integrative complexity. And you read a person's writings on topics, and then you can actually code their writings to see how many perspectives they present, right? And this is integrative complexity, is people who can say, wow, there's a lot of potential different outcomes to this policy, and they're doing so from different perspectives. So integratively complex folks tend to make better decisions as long as there's time for the decision-making process. So high-level thinkers consider multiple potential explanations for an observed phenomenon, and that's where we're going to go with our assignment. Is the phenomenon multiply caused? And it's one of my favorite terms. That's multiply caused or multiply determined. That is, we say, what caused someone to do that? Right off the bat, we're suggesting that there's only one cause, when sometimes behaviors are the result of multiple causal mechanisms. And that's something we can sort out, right? We can say, what are all the potential causes of the behavior we just observed? Then we assign probabilities to each one of those potential causes. That allows us to prioritize them. We get a more accurate picture of why people do what they do. And this also then leads to the idea, let's say in a business context, that there might be multiple solutions that are available to us. And each of those solutions can be assessed for its pros and cons, and then we can make better decision making. If you want to take organizational psychology with me, then that's something that we would discuss and learn to do in that course. So this leads us to discussion board 2. And what I want us to do in this is let's begin with an observation about behavior that compels us to ask the question, why did that occur, or why did they do that? And for me, this is one of the reasons that I was so interested in social psychology from even my adolescence, right? You know, I might have taken a long time off. I'll be honest with you guys, I dropped out of college in my first quarter. Did my high school, graduated, immediately went to college, dropped out in my first quarter. It took me 20 years to get back to school. But when I got back to school, I found a way to study psychology, because that's originally what I wanted to study in the first place. Because I can't leave this stupid question alone. Why did they do that? I'm a people watcher. I observe behavior. And when I see someone do something, it automatically triggers in me the desire to explain why they did it. Right? So this is what we're going to do in the discussion board. Begin with an observation. So you're going to make an observation about a behavior that compelled you to ask, why did someone do that? This can be something you read on a discussion board. Why did they say that? It could, I mean, you know, within a news group or something. Or it could be a behavior that you saw, or it could be a relative of yours who did something you don't understand, but you're going to say, hey, why did they do that? Right? And then the initial post, and the way this works is, check me on the time, but I believe the initial post will be Wednesday, right? And that is, you post, hey, this is what I observed. And I want you to post something that someone else can use as a jumping off point for their response post. So it's like, wow, I saw this person come to the store, and there's a sign that says you must wear a mask to enter, and this person, man, entered without their mask, and then they got into a fight with the employees in the store, either verbal or unfortunately physical fight, and then you ask, why is this person doing this? Why won't this person just wear a mask, right? And so look, I'm looking for a cause of an observed behavior. So that's one example. You can think up a million examples if you've asked the question, why did they do that? It could be about yourself. Why did I do this? Right? So the initial post comes in on Wednesday typically for our discussion boards, and that gives someone time to read initial posts and then pick one and formulate a response. So part 2 is a response. Choose one initial post of a described scenario and then recommend 2 psychological perspectives from which to investigate and explain why you chose those. So wow, you know, I want to explain this from a personality point of view. This person isn't wearing a mask because they view themselves as a rugged individualist who will not be told to do what to do, and potentially that means if they wear a mask, they're giving up their individualism, and it compromises their sense of who they are, right? So notice that that's one potential perspective from which to come. Questions about that? And what are you going to do when you have questions? Where are you going to go? Where are you going to go? Come on. There you go. If you have questions, I want to see you at the Zoom meeting. I want to see you at the Zoom meeting anyway, but that's, you know, up to you and your life plans. And office hours. So let's use those resources to better answer the questions you need answered. Okay, this was the first one. So these little lecturettes, see this is tied directly to discussion board 2. And as far as grading, I know this is an honors class, so I would expect that question. What I'm going to do for grading, I believe this one is worth 10 points, right? So, you know, figure a kind of ratio. I'm going to look at the initial post, 3 to 4 points maybe, and then the response is the more critical aspect of it, is probably going to be worth about 7, probably on that ratio. Remember, you have to do both pieces, right? And you'll never know who's grading your assignments. You'll never know if it's me or the course assistant before you do the assignment. So the course assistant and I will split up the work. I will do some grading. She will do some grading. And the one thing I do want to assure you is, if I grade discussion board 2, I will grade all of discussion board 2, right? The course assistant and I will never split a single assignment between us, because then we inject some unreliability to the grading. So that's it. I hope you guys are doing well, and I hope you continue to do so. Adios.